What's your most NSFW family moment? My uncle cheated on my aunt with her brother's wife for a while about 17-18 years ago. Nobody outside of those four people know except me and my eldest cousin because my aunt got drunk one family reunion and told us. Everyone thinks the two families just hate each other for some petty reason. What makes it worse is my aunt has a child who is turning 18 who looks nothing like his dad but strikingly similar to my other uncle. Yet nobody has ever mentioned anything and we have never brought it up. TLDR, my cousin might be my cousin. One Thanksgiving, many years ago, my mom got the bright idea that before eating we would go around the table and everyone would share what they were thankful for. My dad told her repeatedly that he wasn't doing that, and that was a bad idea. But she insisted. So we're sitting there at the table waiting to see what happens. My whole family was in attendance: brother, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins, and my grandmother. My dad volunteers to go first, and the look on my mom's face is one where she's trying to decide if she should be worried about what he's going to say, mixed with wondering if he just decided to play along. My dad says, "I'm thankful that I'm 50 years old and I can still get a rock-hard erection." Half the table died laughing, half the table was uncomfortable. My mom was pissed, and my dad got exactly what he wanted and stopped that whole process in its tracks. Then it was dinner time. My mom came home one day to a giant pair of tits flapping up and down in the computer screen with the volume on high. Coincidentally, my brother was the only one home that day. I was having trouble with my radiator and had no toolbox, so I asked my dad if I could borrow his. He came over and said he'd fix it for me. I hadn't had time to clean up since he only lives 2 minutes away, so he started reading me my rights about how messy my house is, etc., etc. As he was lamenting over my clothes being on the floor, he opened my wardrobe to demonstrate how much room I had. In my wardrobe, there is a box. My dad looked down at the box. The box was open. The box was filled with fetish gear and sex toys. My dad closed the wardrobe and fixed my radiator. When I was 12 to 13, at a hotel room with my parents for a basketball tournament, gold medal thanks for asking, they fucked. In the bed right next to mine. 10 minutes after lights out. I never mentioned it to anybody. Last weekend I was visiting NYC, and lo and behold we share a hotel room. They fucked. Again. My grandma told my whole family at dinner that she had sex on the beach once. When asked when, she replied, "When I was 76. Not me, but my cousin, who has a bit of a drinking problem, was staying at our grandparents' house for a local festival. She proceeds to get hammered drunk and walks home. Walks in the door, goes to the bathroom and gets naked and crawls into bed. The problem is that it wasn't in the room she was sleeping in. It was in my grandparents' room. So crawled in next to my grandfather naked. I was at my first real girlfriend's house when I was in high school. We would have sex in the basement, finished basement, when her family was home to avoid any walk-ins. After I finished, it was common practice to tie the condom in a knot and avoid throwing it in the trash bin to avoid the mom finding it when she was cleaning. So I left it on top of the ping pong table thinking I could take it upstairs with me when we decided to leave. The ping pong table was right next to the couch. Well, I fucked up. Her father and little brother thought it was a good time to go downstairs and play ping pong. The brother gets to the table first, sees the used rubber, picks it up, the load of semen just dangling there, holds it out, turns to his father and says, "Dad, what is this?" The dad's face was of sheer terror as he screamed at his son to drop it, grabbed his wrist and stomped upstairs, all while not breaking eye contact with me. I guess that instilled a fear of birth control into the poor girl. She got knocked up in college by a man her dad's age. I was back in town to see my family and I met up with my dad and stepmom. They were out drinking with some of our closest family friends. Well, after about an hour or so they are getting pretty drunk and rowdy. I notice the women, including my stepmom, start getting real flirtatious with each other. Mind you, there are 5 couples including my parents at this gathering. I watch it continue and I have to admit I'm a little uncomfortable seeing all these people I grew up around being overly sexual in public and in general. After a while I finally said, "What the fuck is going on here?" to my parents. My stepmom started laughing and replied drunkenly with, "To be honest, you're the only one in this room I haven't fucked." Needless to say, I left quickly after that. I was caught mid-wank by my sister's then boyfriend, who was living with us at the time. I covered things up quick enough, which was a good thing as I was wanking to a porn mag I found under his bed. When I was around 13 I was in bed awake on the couch in our mobile home. Main bed went to my mother and 2 single beds in one room went to my sisters. My cousin and her fiancé were staying with us that night on the only other bed, which was the table converted into a bed, in the sitting room/kitchen room I was in. When they got home from being out on the town I pretended to be asleep. I heard them start looking around for something and saying they couldn't find and it sounding very disappointed. I jokingly thought to myself, "Oh, they're mad because they can't find a condom." 5 minutes later they found what they were looking for. 2 minutes later they having sex about 3 feet away from me. At one point I got a dead arm and had to adjust myself. I gave them both a heart attack but they still didn't know I was awake. Edit, sister should have been plural. My mom chased my teenage brothers around the house inside and out with a dildo once. I had the chance to ask my brother about it later. He was pissed about it at the time, but I was like 6. And my mom was laughing so much so I thought everyone was having a good time. Looking back at it, I can see why he was pissed, mom's dildo ew, and why she thought it was so funny. Good memories. There was a time when my family lived in a tiny apartment. We had 1 bedroom with a double-deck bed. My parents slept on the bottom bunk and my older sister and I slept at the top. Well, one night I wake up to the bed shaking and peeking below. I realized my parents were having sex. I was like maybe 8 or 9, so I wasn't really grossed out but just really confused. My sister slept through the entire thing, or so I've always thought. At our extended family's Christmas party one year when I was like 8 years old, my aunt wanted to show my family the video she took on their latest vacation. Except when they start watching the VHS it suddenly cuts to a video that my 16-year-old cousin, her son, took of a bunch of girls flashing their boobs. Apparently he had a house party while his mom was on a work trip and accidentally taped over his family vacation. So here are like 20 family members watching my cousin's own personal Girls Gone Wild video. Needless to say, he was in trouble. My husband and I had to move in with his parents for about 3 months when we were having financial issues. As I have the very last bag in my hand ready to move to our new home, I sat the bag on the living room floor and went to the bathroom. When I came out, something was going off in the bag. I said, "It's probably our son's Thomas the Tank toy." My mom-in-law dives right in and pulls out my vibrator and holds it up for like 30 seconds like she's the Statue of Liberty holding up her fucking torch. My father-in-law and brother-in-law were also right there in the room. Needless to say, they still bring it up, and Thomas the Train is now code for vibrator in that family. Not my story, a friend of mine from high school. His whole family went to Colombia for Christmas vacation and he fell in love with a girl out there. They went out on a few dates and kissed and stuff but didn't have sex yet. Then one night, they were having a party at his family's house. Everyone was partying outside. So the two of them, 17 years old and a bad combo of drunk and horny, snuck back into the house to have sex for the first time. They start going at it, then the whole family basically walks in on them, laughed their asses off and walked right back out. After being long distance all throughout college, they got married a few years ago and just had their first kid last year. When I was a kid, around 8, the PlayStation was in my parents' room and we usually went to that room to play Gran Turismo with my little brother, which essentially consisted of driving a Suzuki Escudo at full throttle, never hitting the brakes once for the duration of the race, and still whining one lap ahead from everybody. Once he got angry about something and threw his controller away, detaching it from the console, and it ended up landing on my parents' wardrobe, We were small, so we tried climbing on the thing to get to it, and ended up making a lot of the stuff on there falling on us. I felt a soft object hitting my forehead. It looked like a really big dick. My brother took it from the ground wondering what that was. I took it from him, and yes, that was definitely a penis. Innocent me back then thought it was supposed to go on a mannequin or something, because I had never seen a mannequin naked and figured mannequins had penises too. For some reason I instinctively threw it back up the wardrobe, but my little bro had already dashed downstairs telling my parents we found something strange in their bedroom. So my parents dashed upstairs and asked me what it was. I told them we found something that looked like a plastic horse dick and threw it back up. Since then we've had the PlayStation in our room. Thought it would be a good idea to make breakfast for my dad and stepmom. Cooked it all, got it ready and bought the plates in, and thought bringing it in unannounced would be a wonderful surprise. I was not greeted by smiles. Instead I was presented by an image that is forever burned into my mind, my dad under the covers obviously plugging away with my stepmom's head hanging off the side of the bed with her eyes closed and showing me her face. I retreated quickly, but my brain went, well, better put that in permanent storage and make it one of the clearest memories possible. Don't worry, you won't be forgetting any detail at all. My uncle's new wife was meeting the family for the first time, and after a glass of wine she asks if she can be herself. Everyone said yes. Then she asked my then 71-year-old grandpa if he sit at home watching porn and jacking off all day. Edit. This was our first time having her at a family function. We had met her in passing at their wedding. I know it's weird, so no one really knew anything about her. We found out sometime later she had started a brawl at her own wedding after we had departed, and my family is no longer welcome at American Legion. Had a GF over, we did the nasty, I threw the used condom into the trash. Took her home, then came home to my mom and sister laughing their asses off. Turns out our dog ran up to my room, grabbed it out of the trash and was playing with it while I was gone, and they found it. Edit. Apparently this is common. I moved back home from college after my freshman year and had to share a room with my high school-aged brother for a while. I had to listen to him rub one out every single night before he went to sleep. That was a little uncomfortable. Edit. For all the people saying I should have said something to him, he always wore headphones while jerking the gherkin. I didn't really want to go tap on his shoulder and say, hey, stop beating your pud. In retrospect I should have worn headphones myself, but my mom kicked him out of the house for being a juvenile delinquent before the end of the summer, so it wasn't a long-term problem. Edit 2, posted this in another comment, but we were on opposite sides of the room, with a tall dresser between us, so fortunately there was no direct line of sight. I could just hear it, and there's no mistaking that. When I was really young I was playing PlayStation in my brother's room. He has this giant poster of some blonde model, half naked. Paused the game for a quick 5-minute wank. I finished up and just looked towards his bedroom door. My mum literally just walked away as I looked up, never got mentioned ever. I was house sitting for my grandparents many moons ago, and I had to get a fresh sheet. When I lifted the first one, lo and behold, there was my grandmother's vibrator. I kept that secret for years. When I eventually told my mom about it, her only reaction was, your grandfather is impotent. I was weirded out, but now I just laugh about it. Edit. There seems to be some confusion about the impotency, and obviously my grandfather wasn't always impotent. It happened with age. On a different and not entirely unrelated note, he is not my biological grandfather, so he could be my grandfather regardless. When I was 18 I dated a girl. She lived about an hour away, so I would stay at her house overnight, but her parents wouldn't let us stay in the same room, so I slept in a guest bed in the basement. Being 18-year-olds we would be up very late, and go to bed around 2 a.m. Her dad was some kind of delivery driver and worked around 4. He came down to the basement every single morning before work and masturbated to porn on the desktop computer while I was sleeping 10 feet away. There was only a couch between us, so the first couple times I lifted my head to see what he was doing before I realized. You better believe I didn't keep it a secret from her. I'd quietly text from under the blanket, "Your dad's jerking it again," right next to me. When I was a lot younger, I'm 29 now, my parents had some people over, including my one aunt and uncle who are incredibly straight-laced. Early on in the evening, in one of the family rooms, she put on a VHS tape to watch of a movie she remembered seeing back during a trip she took with my uncle years ago. Nothing was really happening with the get-together as of yet, since it was still really early in the evening, so some of us stuck around to see what movie it was before more people came. Within the first 5 minutes, there were more topless girls and nudity in it than your average Skin IMAX flick nowadays. My aunt is absolutely mortified at this point and says she doesn't remember any of this in the movie, while my mom, her sister, is laughing hysterically, grabs the remote from her and says she should keep it on just because what's going on is so ridiculous, and my aunt's reaction is just so funny. I think my mom's exact words were, "How the hell could you not remember any of this? There's so many tits on the screen I can't even see the plot." Everyone in the room is dying that she brought over what was essentially a softcore 80s sexploitation movie with the subplot of there being some skiing thrown in there sporadically. My dad walks in since he hears everyone laughing, and he's just got the biggest WTF face on when he sees what's up, makes an about face back towards the kitchen, and pours himself a drink. I skipped school. I used to do it all the time because my dad worked 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. most days and was a single father. I was in my room as per norm and he came home early. Didn't want to get caught, so stayed perfectly still. My bedroom's at the top of the stairs, the computer is right at the base of the stairs. Dad watches porn for the next hour. I think he heard a squeak cause he stopped to holler up the stairs for me. But didn't budge. Didn't move. Didn't say anything. Just waited. 5 minutes pass, he's satisfied. Goes back to his business. Never told him. Never skipped school again. My auntie rang my best mate, who was mowing her lawns during that time, and asked him to fuck her. He declined. It's good because even though I don't see her often, she usually slips me $50. I figure it's her way of saying STFU. I shouted out loud that my dad's penis was huge, at an Olive Garden. I was 4, dad dick syndrome had me pretty good. My wife and I made the very poor decision of playing Cards Against Humanity with my parents. I ended up having to explain to my dear mother what bukkake is. I had to. She would not let it go. She ended up winning the game. The morning after my wedding, I bumped into my cousin in the hotel lobby and she was asking about one of my groomsmen. She wanted to know how we were related to him. I told her he was just a friend of mine. She looked disappointed by this, and at the time I had no idea why. She'd cheated on her new husband with him after the wedding reception. And she was bummed he wasn't her cousin or some shit. Found a picture of my dad wearing lingerie. Not in a I enjoy wearing it at home by myself kind of way, but in a I was forced to by my mates during a piss up kind of way. Hilarious with a hint of mental scarring because ew. Thank you for watching the video. Welcome to Reddit Wisdom. Here you will learn the wisdom of the crowd, the wisdom of Reddit. Please consider subscribing for more Reddit wisdom.